Experiment time. Today I'm going to see what increasing amounts of light rye flour will do to your sourdough bread. Hi, I'm Sune, and I'm a food geek. A while back, I did an experiment where I saw what increasing amounts of dark rye flour did to the crumb, the texture, the oven spring, and the taste of sourdough bread. Today I'm going to repeat that experiment, but I'm using light rye flour instead. So what is light rye flour? It's also known as white rye, and here in Denmark we call it sifted rye flour. It's essentially the rye version of an all-purpose or bread flour. All of the bran and the germ has been sifted out so that you can make bread that's a lot lighter. The downside is some of the delicious taste is sifted out with the bran and the germ, and the upside is a less coarse bread. So it's all about what you're trying to achieve. If you're new to this channel, I bake a lot of sourdough bread and I make delicious food from all over the world. If you want to see more of this content, please join me by subscribing and ringing the bell so you won't miss any future videos. The formula that I'm using today is exactly the same as I used in the previous experiment. 80% hydration, 20% inoculation, and 2% salt. I vary the amount of rye flour from 20 all the way to 80%. While the hydration may not be optimal for this flour, I do so that we can compare the two experiments and learn from it. More on that later. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider becoming a member at Patreon. You can also buy some merch or use the links in the description for tools and ingredients. Those were the words. This is the experiment. This is an experiment, which means I won't go into the details like I will with a recipe. If you want the details of my method, go watch my video on my master recipe, which I'm linking in the card above. First, I'm going to mix the dough for the control. Then I'm mixing the dough for the 40% light rye. This dough seems close to the control. Then it's 60% light rye. This dough seems extra sticky. And then it's the 80% light rye. This dough is very thin and sticky. Then I let all the four doughs rest for an hour. Then it's time for the first set of stretch and folds. First the 20%. Nice and elastic. Then the 40%. This is very elastic too. Then the 60%. This dough is elastic too, but cannot be pulled as far. Then the 80%. This dough seems elastic, but it's sort of rubbery and very sticky. Then the second set of stretch and folds. This one is coming along nicely. A very nice and elastic dough. This dough is developing. The stickiness has been tempered a bit. There's some development in this dough, but it's still pretty sticky and doesn't hold together well. Then the third set of stretch and folds. This is a great looking dough. It's ready for proofing. This dough looks great too. This dough is going for proofing as well. Not a great looking window pane, but we only have 40% wheat, so I guess it's as good as it gets. Off to proofing as well. With only 20% wheat, the window pane fails, but it's gonna keep failing. So we'll just proof this dough. After they've grown 25%, I pre-shape them. The 20% is just a great dough. The 40% is very nice too. The 60% is more sticky, but not impossible to work with. Oh my god, this is so sticky. I could wet the scraper, but what's the point? After pre-shaping, I'll let them rest for 20 minutes and then I proceed to the final shaping. The 20% is shaped the regular way for a petard. The 40% is easy to shape as well. The 60% is pretty sticky, but can be shaped without too much effort. The 80% is just so sticky that I have to use extra flour. After I've shaped them all, I let them go into the fridge for an overnight retard. Then in the morning I heat my oven for an hour and then I bake the first bread. I flip it. I score it. And then I bake it. After 20 minutes, I lift the lid off my Challenger and reveal the bread. Oh wow, nice oven spring. Then after 20 minutes more, I take it out. I put it to cool on a wire rack. Then it's time for the 40%. I flip it. I score it. And I bake it. Nice oven spring too, looks almost like the 20%. Then it's time for the 60%. I flip it. I score it. And then I bake it. It's pretty flat. Then it's time for the 80%. I flip it. I score it. And then I bake it. Wow, frisbee alert. Let's have a look at the crumb of these 4 breads. For this tasting, Maria will be joining me. Welcome to this sniff and taste test which is sort of part 2 of the rye experiment that we talked about in the first sniff and taste test, which is sourdough bread made with light rye instead of dark rye. As you can see, they're all here. We have a non-toasted version and a toasted version of each, and we're going to smell them and we're going to taste them, and we're going to say what we think about it. But first, I think we should talk a little bit about what we see. This is the control, which means it doesn't have very much rye. It has 20%, and I think the oven spring is great. It has a great shape. It's tall. It opens up, and it looks like oven spring wise that it's getting smaller and smaller the more rye you put in, which is exactly the same that we saw in the other one. The big difference here is that because the hydration is so high, the light rye doesn't absorb as much, which means when you go higher and higher, it also gets flatter. So, but I think crumb-wise, there's a big difference from the last experiment. We had a reasonably open crumb on the 20%, and then it got to be smaller and smaller and smaller holes and a tighter and tighter crumb. And I don't really think that's the case here. I mean, this is nice and open, but so is this, some big holes, some small holes. Here you can see this is kind of a lacy crumb. Of course, it's going to be different for each piece you take. It might not be exactly the same. This is really cool, I think. It's a true lacy crumb with all these like medium. Yeah, it kind of looks like lace. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's in that sense. I think last time we figured out that once you toast it, all the smell goes away. So I don't know if it makes any sense to smell the toasted ones, but I mean, let's try the non-toasted ones.
Non-toasted with great oven spring.
That's a wonderful medium sour smell, I would say.
Yeah.
It's absolutely also rye. You can, like, had it been whole grain wheat, it wouldn't have had this kind of sour. It'd still be sour, but it would be different, I think.
It smells delicious, I think. It's easy.
It's nice.
It's
and
soft and
it's very soft compared to actually even the normal control.
Yeah.
Which has the whole grain rye. It's very soft. Which has, I guess, different applications than having a more chewy bread.
It's like it's soft and flaky at the same time. And moist. It's really good.
All right, let's try the toasted version. This time they should all be toasted the same amount.
Crunchy. Very crunchy. Oh my god, it's good.
Crunchy is addictive. When it gets toasted, it just becomes more delicious because of the crunchiness. Crunchy.
We both like.
Yeah.
Prefer toasted
I mean,
bread.
some people might not like it, but I mean, for me, it's wonderful.
I think it's good. It's quite harmless. Can you say that? It's mild in taste and it's soft and
It's almost like a sandwich bread. It has a little bit more character,
a bit more.
But still like a toasted sandwich bread when you have this one, and it's as soft as a sandwich bread, which is actually kind of interesting.
Yeah. That's good. You can use it for everything.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Let's try the 40%.
Yes.
That's interesting. Try the smell. It's still sour, but it's a rounder sour.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The crumb is not as soft. It's more stretchy, chewy.
Yeah. It doesn't, flake apart.
No. There's not a lot of taste though. It's kind of almost bland. And I mean, the salt is exactly the same as the last. It's 2% in every bread. So it's interesting that it doesn't seem to bring out the taste as much here, but we'll see what happens once we get to the other ones.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try the toasted.
Toasted. Doesn't smell so much.
No, and it's not as crisp. Last time we actually really liked the 40%.
Yeah.
This is, it's just a little bit boring.
It's good. It's very neutral.
Yes, not neutral like this because it had the softness and so here it's just kind of chewy like a sourdough bread, but it doesn't have as much sourdough taste.
So what, 60%?
Yeah. It smells very bready, but almost not sour at all. This tastes like rye to me. You can taste the rye in this one. It's still pretty mild though.
They're all very mild.
But it's not as mild as this one though. That one, I thought bordered on tasteless.
Crunchy. Wow.
This is much better.
Much better toasted. Yeah. Much more flavor. Oh my.
That's weird.
That's really a big difference. It has more character. It's actually like it's more salted and everything just falls into place.
I agree. Well, let's try the last one. There's that sort of mild or round sourness.
But definitely sour.
Yeah, it's more yogurty than sort of acid, like vinegary.
Yeah.
It's still very mild though.
It's mild and it's moist. Oh my god.
Oh, that's
I
really
really
good.
like it.
It has the same kind of bready character as I think that Swedish limpa bread, which was also made with this flour.
It's so light because of all the tiny holes in it.
So when it's toasted, each hole gets crunchy on the edge.
Super crunch.
So
Crunchy paradise. This is good. It's delicious. Because it's so strong also.
all right, favorites.
Favorite, actually, this one, toasted.
And not toasted.
Yeah. Yeah, actually both of them. And I'm really in for toasted bread. But yeah, definitely this one. And then this one, I think.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I mean, those two were just too mild.
Yeah, too neutral.
That was interesting for me. I didn't expect there to be that much of a difference.
No, me neither.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime.
So, the last one was a true frisbee. And it wasn't because of lack of agitation or oddities or anything like that. In the last experiment, the dark rye flour that I used was very absorbent. So even though the hydration stayed the same, we got less and less oven spring, but we didn't lose any definition because the rye absorbed the water. That was not the case in this experiment. Because most of the germ and the bran was sifted out of the flour, it didn't take the same amount of water. On top, the gluten content is very low in rye. There wasn't any structure in the dough to keep it together. So if you want to use a higher amount of sifted rye in your bread, you need to use a lower hydration to get a freestanding loaf. Another choice is to bake the bread in a pan, which is often the choice of how to bake a rye bread. I hope you learned something today. See you next time.
Honey, see what I found? Your favorite thing. And
Butter.
This. And this sausage cheese. Could do with some olives. Let's see.
This one. Molly?
No. She understands sausage language and Danish. That's it.
Sausage language. Well, like I told you, my late cat also got to be completely nuts when you would cut up salami, smoked salami like that. It just go completely, just jump up and down. Just.
Did you put butter? Yeah. Okay.
I like butter under my Nutella as well.
No, I don't.
And even liver pate. I mean, I know people are like, why do you do it? It's already something you smear on, but it changes the taste. And it does for Nutella as well. It gets this butter chocolate thing that's just like, oh. I think everybody who says that they don't like it with butter underneath just never tried it.
Yeah. Something like that.
Last time I had it, I had this glass with just, stuff on the side. I poured milk in it and put it in the microwave.
You did? You didn't tell me?
Because it turns into this delicious, nutty chocolate milk thing.